So in Civil 3D 2015, the bearing and distance command gives different results depending upon how you run the command. So in this drawing, it's very simple. I've started with the default template. I split it into two different views just so things are easier to see here. And I've put a circle marking where I want to start my line from. So I'm going to start the line command. I like to type, so I'm going to type line. I want it to start at the beginning of the center of the circle, so I'll snap to the center of the circle. And now I want to put in my bearing and distance. So I'm going to type apostrophe BD for the bearing and distance transparent command. So I'm going to ask me for the quadrant, so I want to go into quadrant number 1. I want to put in a bearing, so I'm going to use the bearing 45.5000. I like using this number because it's very obvious what's going to happen when I'm done here. And I'll use a distance of 100 feet. And there's the end of my line. It's up in there in that second viewport. I want to repeat the process. So let me start the line command again. I'll type line. Again, I'm going to snap to that same point. I want to put in the same bearing and distance, but this time I'm going to use the bearing and distance transparent command off the toolbar. I'm going to type 1 for the quadrant, and I'm going to use the exact same bearing, 45.5000, for a distance of 100 feet. And as you can see, I get different results. So let's go ahead and add labels to these so we can see what happened. So I'm going to add line labels, single segment, bearing over. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and label this line, and I'll label this line here. And I'm just going to go ahead and flip this other label over to the other side so it's easier to see. And as you can see, when I type the bearing and distance command, 45.50 translated to 45 degrees, 50 minutes, 0 seconds. When I used the bearing and distance command off the toolbar, it took 45.50 as 45.5 degrees, hence 45 degrees, 30 minutes. And so that's the difference between the two of them. And if you want, we can actually go into our text window and see what happened. So when I did the bearing and distance off the command line, off the toolbar rather, what it did, it is actually converted that bearing and distance to a distance and an angle. And it used the angle 45.5000. When I did it simply by typing it, it took that same input but calculated a point instead. And so that's the difference between the two commands. Hopefully this makes sense, and you'll be able to get out there and use these commands and understand what they're doing and be very productive. Thanks.